Today, we're going to journey through three incredible imperial eras that literally carved the map of the modern Middle East. So let's jump right in. It's a huge question, right? For over 2,000 years, the Middle East has been this epicenter, this crossroads for empires and global power struggles. To really get why, you have to look back at the giants who walked that stage first. So our story kicks off with the original clash of titans. For centuries, way before the rise of Islam, this whole region was basically a battleground for two superpowers, the Roman Byzantine Empire in the west and the Sasanian Persian Empire over in the east. And you really can't overstate the scale of these empires. The Roman Byzantines, they held the entire Mediterranean coast, the heartlands of what would become Christianity. And to the east, you had the Sasanians controlling these vast territories of Iraq and Iran. These weren't just two empires bumping up against each other. They were two entirely different worlds, locked in a fight for total supremacy that went on for centuries. And believe me, this was no Cold War. We're talking about a relentless series of incredibly brutal, all-out conflicts. For more than a century, they just went back and forth, tearing each other apart. But that final war, the one that started in 602, wow, that was on another level. It was basically a 26-year-long death match that drove both of these mighty empires to the absolute breaking point. And here's the crucial takeaway. Technically, the Byzantines won, but the cost was catastrophic. It's one of history's toughest lessons. These kinds of existential wars don't really create winners. They just create power vacuums. Both empires were left completely exhausted, their armies decimated, their treasuries empty. And this mutual destruction left the door wide open for the lightning-fast Islamic conquests that were about to explode out of Arabia just a few years later. Okay, so let's fast forward a few hundred years. A new kind of conflict is about to hit the region, this time from a completely different direction. The Crusades were like a shockwave coming out of Western Europe, powered by this intense religious belief and a call to go and reclaim the Holy Land. The whole 200-year story of the Crusades follows this really classic arc. It all starts with this powerful call to arms from the Pope, which gets armies from all over Europe on the move. And at first, they're wildly successful. They capture Jerusalem, they set up their own little kingdoms. But the great irony here is that this foreign invasion actually sparked the very unity that would end up defeating it. It rallied Muslim forces under incredible leaders like Saladin. And in the end, after generations of fighting, the Crusaders were pushed out for good. But the effects, they went way, way beyond the battlefield. The Crusades left these deep, lasting scars, really hardening the lines between the Christian and Muslim worlds. Now, paradoxically, they also opened up trade and brought a ton of knowledge back to Europe. But maybe the most important legacy was that they created this powerful, enduring memory of Western invasion, a historical trauma that, believe it or not, is still brought up in the region's politics today. So after all this conflict, the stage is set for a new power to rise up, one that would come to dominate the entire region. The Ottoman Empire, which started with Turkic warriors in what is now Turkey, would go on to become one of the longest-lasting and most important empires in the history of the world. There is one single date that defines the moment the Ottomans became a true world power, 1453, a moment that literally changed the course of history. And here's why it's so important. In 1453, the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed the Conqueror captured Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. That single act finally put out the last ember of the Roman legacy. Think about that. A flame that had burned for almost 1,500 years was just gone. And it cemented the Ottomans as the new masters of that critical crossroads between Europe and Asia. And their ambition was just staggering. I mean, look at this. At its peak, the Ottoman Empire wasn't just some regional power. It was a global superpower. It stretched deep into Europe through the Balkans, controlled all of North Africa, and held the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. From their capital, which they renamed Istanbul, they ruled this vast, multicultural empire right at the center of the known world. Which brings us to a really key question. How on earth did they manage to hold all of this together for more than 600 years? Well, the answer comes down to a couple of really unique and clever institutions they developed. First up was something called the millet system. This was a really pragmatic way to deal with a super diverse population. Instead of trying to force everyone to convert, the Ottomans basically let Christian and Jewish communities govern their own internal affairs. Marriages, divorces, inheritance, all according to their own religious laws. It created stability for centuries. But it's also a bit of a paradox because by keeping communities separate, it might have prevented a single unified Ottoman identity from ever truly forming. The second pillar, pure military might. And the symbol of that power was the Janissaries. This was an elite fighting force, and they were recruited in a really unique way. They took Christian boys from the Balkans, converted them to Islam, and trained them to be this absolutely formidable army, whose loyalty was only to the Sultan. They were the tip of the Ottoman spear for centuries. Of course, no empire lasts forever. By the 1800s, after all those centuries on top, the Ottoman Empire was starting to crumble. You had internal stagnation, corruption, and at the same time, the nations of Europe were getting more and more powerful. Eventually, the empire got this nickname, the Sick Man of Europe. It was a slow decline that set the stage for its final collapse after World War I. All right, so let's just pull this all together. We've looked at three massive eras: the ancient Roman-Persian rivalry, the shock of the Crusades, and the long dominance of the Ottomans. Each one left its own unique mark on the region, shaping the religious, ethnic, and political fault lines that we can still see so clearly today. And that really brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with. Empires rise and they fall, but their ghosts stick around. The borders they drew, the rivalries they started, the identities they helped create, it's all still part of the story. So the next time you look at a map of the Middle East, ask yourself, can you see the outlines of these ancient powers in the conflicts and alliances of our own time?